Alright, y'all. Try to keep your social distance with all this big crowd in here. But good morning.
Good morning.
And I do hope just let everybody know, but if you can't look at the picture and figure this out, we're back in the willing worker classroom. So if anybody would be more comfortable in here than they're all sitting in the sanctuary for Sunday school, please feel welcome to come on back. We moved into the sanctuary originally back in the cold weather because the sanctuary was going to be heated anyway, and this wasn't. And it just seemed like it might be a little bit of a savings. And then when the weather got hot, to tell you the truth, I forgot all about it. And thank you that other people had the idea that maybe we could move back. And we asked a few people, and they said, yeah, they would be more willing to come back to Sunday school if we moved. So we over here, so y'all come on back. The lesson this morning is for Acts chapter 6. And Acts is supposedly written by Luke. I ain't so sure about that because it reads like it's different. But anyway, Acts is the Acts of the Apostles. It tells about what they done after Christ was crucified, resurrected, after he reappeared to the apostles, and after God sent the Holy Spirit down to Peter and all the other apostles. And so this Acts tells the story of them forming the original church in and around Jerusalem, and also has the story of Saul/Paul's conversion, his persecution of the church and his conversion. And so there's a lot going on in Acts, and it's a right long book. But anyway, this particular lesson is kind of, I guess the church is growing. This young Christian church, and it's having some growing pains. And apparently most of the people, which I guess it makes sense because it started in Jerusalem, most of the people who were following this new faith were Jews from around Jerusalem. Well then, as word spread around, it got to be people coming in from other places to Jerusalem who were, for the most part, Jews. But, you got to remember the Jews weren't just in Jerusalem and Israel. They were spread all around everywhere. And so it talks about the Greek speaking and the Aramaic speaking. Well, Aramaic, as I understand it, was the spoken language, and I guess maybe written language too, that was used in Israel. And of course, most of the other people from other places spoke some version of Greek. And so you got new people coming in, the church community is growing, and it got to be a complaint that it says the Greek-speaking members complained that the others, the ones from Jerusalem, were overlooking a lot of their widows and unfortunate people, I guess, who were not being looked after when apparently they were passing around food, whatever was needed on a regular basis. And it got to the point that some of the new ones were complaining that their poor women and widows and whatnot were not being looked after, they were being missed. And I don't think it was anything on purpose, like a prejudice thing. I think it was the fact that up until now, Peter and the main apostles, who were all the original apostles with the exception of Judas, of course, they replaced him with somebody, I forgot who. But anyway, they were kind of trying to be in charge of everything. and running the church too. And it don't say whether they all met in one place or they had several different places. I really don't know. But I think they probably had gotten a number of places where they met and people came together. Well, when this was brought to their attention that people being left out, they were like, well, we got to do something different because we can't do all this and preach and reach out to people and run the church at the same time. So they told all the congregation, if you want to, for lack of a better term, they told them, y'all pick 7 men that y'all respect and can agree on, that are good men, got good judgment, and bring to us. And so they did, and Peter and the apostles appointed them to be in charge of looking after people, and said they got a lot better after that. And the whole idea of it is, it says the purpose statement is to discern how the church can best care for its members in need. As Don Rose mentioned before we started, it's she said we call this volunteer Sunday. It's about the fact that the church cannot depend on the pastor and 1 or 2 people to do everything. And it was interesting, they talked about, in the teacher book, I believe, they talked about how way back in the United States when Methodism first came over here, it wasn't no preachers much. We know about this church started after Bishop Asbury, who was from way up north somewhere, came down here, and they just went all around like several states. And so you didn't have a preacher every Sunday and during the week. So the local people, I guess, maybe kind of leaders in the community that had wanted to start up and organize a Methodist church, they sort of took care of everything. And when they met together, they'd all sit down and talk about what might need to be done, who might need help. And so they took care of it. Well, then as the Methodist church grew, and you got plenty of preachers everywhere, it got to be one preacher, one congregation. And people sort of, you got somebody who's gone to school and been trained to run a church and look after people, so they're sort of in charge and responsible for everything being done. But we've always had more than one person or 2 people could do. So we've always had people in the church using what talents they have the best they can to look after the congregation and to look after others outside the congregation. And Corona really messed it up there when the church had to go virtual, which means online. People weren't coming. And communicating with everybody was a little bit more difficult. And, out of sight, out of mind, I guess you would say. So it became a struggle for the pastors to take care of all this, making the church online and still be responsible for looking after everybody. So that kind of, I think, maybe has made the situation a little bit worse. But all y'all, I'm sure, y'all older than me, y'all been on the nominations committee before, and every time I've been on it, and it gets a little bit worse, and the Corona made it even worse. It's not so much, let's pick people whose talents are best for such a committee. It's who can we get that ain't already on 5 committees, and we might could pester them to one more time, fill in this spot. And it's kind of sad that it's that way. And we blessed at this church and probably most other churches. When I talk to other people I know that go to different churches, it's the same everywhere. A lot of people will not be on the committee, don't want nothing to do with it. I understand that because I don't want to be on there either, but it seems like I always wind up on some. If we didn't have a lot of people who kind of work behind the scenes that are not on those committees and don't want to be, but they're always doing stuff to help the church. But the point of the whole lesson is that without members who are willing to give some of their time, none of it couldn't be done. The church couldn't run. You know, you look around at all the things we need just to keep the building going. You know, we got a lot of people we got Scott, Rich, and Tar who keep things running and going, keep stuff repaired, and we got a bunch of other people, and I'm not even gonna try to name everybody, who make sure that the roof gets fixed as it needs to be. And we'll have to hire a lot more stuff than it used to. It used to be the men would all get up on the roof and do it, but the men are getting older, and we got the same problem all the other churches complain about. We don't have the young people coming along, so I don't know who's going to fill out all these committees in 10, 15 more years, 20 more years, and there's less and less people. I don't know what'll happen. Maybe some new people will come from somewhere. And you know, to me, a big part of the problem is the young people. Our young people either don't care if they're going to church, or a lot of them. Freddie Ollinger made a comment this week that we got some wonderful young people, but most of them end up going somewhere else to make a lot, because it ain't a lot for them to stick around here. And that hurts. I don't know what the answer is. You know, Peter and them had one advantage back then. They had more new people coming in. The church was growing. The church now that we're in, it ain't really growing. It's kind of staying sort of stable, but it ain't really growing. We have a few new people who come in, and I'm not going to name no names, but we've been fortunate. We've had some new people come in who, and you may not really know them, but they really do a lot to try to keep our mission work and whatnot going on. And by mission work, I don't mean missions overseas. I take that to mean looking after anybody that needs help. And that's just the way I use that term, so that's what I mean by mission work. But we got a few Johnny come lately, I guess, that have really stepped in and trying to do some good. But it's
sometimes, Tim, people are just waiting to be asked. I know on hospitality, when we had funerals, of course, we had to change it with the COVID. But anybody I ever asked to help me fix a deal, I've only had one person in this church to turn me down. Mm-hmm. They're willing, people in here are willing to do, but I think a lot of times you are afraid to volunteer. Mm-hmm. But if you are asked, oh yes. So sometimes we got to have a good volunteer leader. I'm not saying I'm a good leader, but I mean you got to have somebody to be in charge.
Of dragging new people in.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm not good at that. That's one of my big problems. I ain't good at asking for help and that kind of stuff.
Well, you just saw how I did.
Yeah. But you used to be a teacher. You used to calling them youngins out and making them go up to the board and whatnot. Because ain't nobody going to the board on their own to help. I know. But
don't never hurt to ask.
But no, you're right, and we do. And like I said a little bit earlier, we got people who are glad to work. They just kind of want to stay in the background doing it. And I don't have a problem with that. I understand.
Well, I understand, and Henry could tell me the Methodist men, but I understand that y'all have more younger people coming.
Yeah, right, man. Well, nobody much here this morning, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, last time I think you had a whole lot of younger ones coming, which they want the barbecue to kind of go toward the young ones, let them be more in charge. which they need the training.
Yeah, they do. And
And I'm glad I don't see it, but I'm glad to know it. If they'll keep it up.
and we got Thomas and Darrell who could run the barbecue by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If
I thought they
necessary.
did.
It was
I thought they did.
Well,
more or less.
pretty
That
much
part I-
the,
Yeah.
the actual work
The
is
barbecue,
done part of it. But you know, you got those like Matt who get too old to do the work. But
Right.
they have always been the kind of like you got Carolyn to see if she could hit up Madison. Max one he can always grab you by the collar, you know, we need
Yeah.
some help, you know. So all that's good to have that, but we've been blessed, and I personally, I don't worry too much. I know the rules of the Methodist Church say you're supposed to have so many of these committees and so many people on. I don't worry too much about that because whatever needs to be done has always gotten done
Yeah, I
somehow or another.
I don't think you have to have a committee.
I don't even.
Just have somebody in charge.
But
You
every-
see this on so.
Every pastor seems to think it's important that we do that and commit, and I think it's pressure coming down on them to put names on the sheet. And I understand that, but at the same time, the work gets done one way or the other, and somebody's gonna probably keep doing it. So I don't think we're in as terrible a shape as it seems like from a lesson, but it's kind of a hard lesson to me to really teach.
Well,
But
it was just like in the lesson when the apostles asked for somebody to help lead to go out and do like to feed the widows and the needy. They didn't have time to study the Word of God and get out and preach and take care of the whole community. Now we have different churches, so we're not like a whole section.
we ain't like the one church for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And some churches, really get in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do a lot.
They do, but I'll put the record of this church against any other.
I
The
think we
size
do.
of the
The
congregation.
size of our congregation, the age of our congregation, I think we do a whole lot.
And I think a lot of it goes back to it was basically a community church
Yes.
and a family. Most everybody in here, I mean, I'm kin to everybody, just about everybody in here, mom's side and daddy's side. All y'all are too, so, that's the biggest thing that I hate to see is the fact that your community family is kind of breaking down. The church ain't breaking down, but the
Yes.
community is just not what it used to be.
The family, as we knew it, they're moving away.
Yeah, they're spreading out, and they're not all together. We used to be everybody was together working on the farm, and you didn't have no way to get off of it, until you got out of school. But it's just sad to me that life, way of life has had to end. I don't think it was all bad.
Times change. We're just seeing it change.
Well, people want to make good money and have a lot of stuff, so they go other places. And then when you got a bunch of children, you got one farm, it may not be big enough for everybody to stay there and make it and raise their family, so you don't have no children.
Well, you think about how Raleigh is growing more this way and everything, and I look at Franklinton, how the housing has really gone up in Franklinton.
Going crazy.
And so, we stand to hope that people will move closer in and start coming.
It may be, 'cause
Yeah, we may build up more.
folks now don't think nothing of driving 40 miles
No,
for something.
but I'm not really ready to sell my farmland for them to put housing on.
No, they got to go somewhere else. Well, once I'm dead and gone, it ain't gonna make no difference to nobody. It's
Yeah.
somebody else's word. I don't worry about myself enough about that. But personally, like we was talking about, the committees, whether all the names is full or not, don't really bother me. But like when Peter told the congregation, he said, y'all pick some people out to be in charge of this, we can still do that here. And if we have somebody that's in charge, they seem to be able to go around and button hooking up people. And like you said, the people in the church don't mind helping. They just kind of
They're waiting back.
wait to be asked. We told not. We've always been kind of told, don't jump up and volunteer for nothing. And a lot of times that is a bad idea. But
You've been in
people
service,
don't
you know
mind.
how to volunteer.
yeah, people don't mind helping when it's necessary. I mean, look what Ann does to help the barbecue. She ain't in the Methodist men.
Right.
But it couldn't hardly go without him. Henry's in the Methodist men, but he done. He keeps Ann going cooking work.
We going.
But I mean, pretty much every family in the church is always, has always
Involved
Not
one
mine
way or
either.
the other, yeah.
Yeah. everybody's
We all
involved.
work together when it comes to that.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, everybody falls in together. But I've always been impressed when we had a barbecue. It's time to have that day, and Mac would be running around crazy on where we're gonna have to help. And every time we had it, it'd be people I ain't seen in 10 years.
And
coming
standing
here.
around with
And they all falling on top of each other because can't find something to do, grabbing stuff away from each other to try to help out. So I think from what I've talked to other people, all churches about the same.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about big city churches, but I imagine they kind of the same too.
Well, in a big city church too, the pastor has to have more help.
You got a big administration in the
Yes.
church.
Now, in a small church like ours, I know that who's pastor here can do most of the visiting of the hospital and stuff. We don't have that many at one time in the hospital
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But in the bigger churches, you have to have an associate pastor or some members of the
Well,
congregation.
they got all
come
kind
out.
of people. They got visiting committees.
Yes,
I think they go.
Well, I know the Baptist church in Franklinton, every deacon has assigned so many people.
Right,
And that deacon is to look after those people.
right. And they was talking about the deacons and all in one of the books here on this lesson, what they're responsible for. But have we ever had any deacons in the church?
We don't have, the Methodists don't
I don't
have
know about
deacons. The Methodists don't have deacons.
Well, this book says they do.
They did, but
But I never, and I have heard or read about.
but our
Deacons, but I don't know what they
deaconesses are, appointed by the conference?
Yes, they're not local church.
Not like,
It's,
the
I don't know what
Baptist.
exactly they do.
but, and our state church, they have deacons. And you know who your deacon is, and if you need help, you go to your deacon.
Right.
Of course, in our church, if you need help, you come to anybody, and if we can't do it, we'll say somebody will.
Yeah.
So,
I like it better that way,
I
personally.
do too.
Anyway, according to Liz, we gotta have time.
Huh.
The trustees do pretty much the same thing.
Pretty much
Yeah,
so, but the trustees look more or less like the building and that kind of thing, not the individual people.
Right, they're not out there about,
But that's, I always
Community
compare them
services.
to deacons, yeah.
but yes, I ain't never heard of no deacon that had nothing to do with the church. But from what I read, it sounds like that they're not really necessarily assigned to one church.
They're more or less like what do you call
Like
it,
a
deaconess, a deaconess before you become a pastor or something, I don't know.
I don't know.
Something like that either.
None of that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Well, I'm gonna shut this thing off because it's
Okay.
before it leaves, but we ain't got to start talking.